coincidence that we hear so many of these top achievers here talking about, of course, consistency, talking about planning, execution, right? It's the easiest thing to do, yet it seems the hardest thing to do because we find all the other things to keep ourselves busy. But on that front, we're going to talk today about asset management, talk about our core business, what we do in a lot of our core business to go in there and improve our assets and put in a plan in place so we can basically set the narrative to make these the most profitable, most successful projects, not only for us, not only for our investors, but better communities, of course, for our tenants to live in. So I'm Jason Yarusi. A little about me. We've transacted on about 15 acquisitions over the course from 2017. Yerusi Holdings is our multifamily investment firm. It's me and my beautiful wife, Peely. She is home because we have missed way too much school with the kiddos, and the school said you have to bring the kids to school. So she's not here this time. We host a Multifamily Live podcast, as you know. Seven Figure Multifamily is our mastermind. We have our group out there today. We'll be doing Multifamily Live. We'd love to see you there, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So, a little about us. We started in a lot of different things, right? Going crazy in the space, all over the spot. Jumping into, of course, real estate after being in construction, working in bars, doing a lot of other things that just weren't really where we wanted to be in life. And it led us to find multifamily. And what we loved about multifamily, and specifically larger multifamily, is that we could get back our time with our family. And that was always the key piece of life that we were missing, right? We always found ourselves so busy, right? So prior, Scott was talking about Jocko Willink. One of my favorite things that he says is, go slow to go fast. Because so many times our life goes by us so quickly because we're constantly going so fast. And everything just happens, and we don't realize what's happening, and we don't like what's happening, but we never slow down to retract, to get back on focus, to be where we want to go. What we loved about multifamily is that we could take a step back, we could put together a process, we can empower others so they could be in their best position to win, to go out there to make these better communities to live, that would ultimately make the property have more revenue, more income, which would, of course, trend down to the bottom line, which would make, of course, a more profitable environment for ourselves and our investors. So, what is asset management? Well, asset management itself is not property management. So there will be people in here that you will manage your own assets. At a time, you may scale to a part where you actually might vertically integrate and actually manage your assets in-house. However, there's still going to be two separate departments. The asset manager, and of course, this is on both sides, monitors the economic and operating performance of the property, creates, oversees, monitors the workflow of the property, monitors the management company, empowers the management company where the property management company is handling the day-to-day operations. Also is aiming to achieve the goals and objectives for the owners and the investors. As you continue to grow, this may be you. You may be wearing all the hats when you first start out. This may be a point here where you are, of course, doing the acquisitions, doing the due diligence, doing the asset management, the underwriting, the capital raising, the balance sheet. You might be doing all the roles. But as you continue to grow, this may become a person on your team. And this person is going to, of course, aim to hit goals and objectives that are not only for you as the owner, the operator, and your investors. Your property management on the other side works, of course, to achieve the goals and plans of the owners, but is going to work directly with the asset manager. The asset manager will work to provide the guidance, and of course, as the property continues to evolve and continues to move forward, the asset manager will work with the property manager to pivot accordingly if the plan is not fulfilling as first set out to. So, here's parts of the operations of asset managers. And this is, of course, going to tie into other income drivers and other ways that we look to improve the property. As part of looking to take on a property is the planning section. Scott before us talked a lot on planning. The biggest part for multifamily is things take a long time. For anybody who's flippers or flips a home, right? You get a vacant home, it's as fast as you can get it flipped, get it back in the market. A property itself, when you're bringing on a multifamily property, typically there's a lot of people living there. Could be 20% occupied, could be 100% occupied. So your plan is going to have a cadence, a pace, based on, of course, your threshold, right? Your risk tolerance, and your ability to, of course, work your plan based on the plan itself, the property itself, and the leases in place. So on the planning side, you're going to work on the property inspections to make sure the underwriting, the analysis of the property is actually lining up to what you find with the property. Working on the income and expense certifications. I'm sure plenty of you in here have brought properties from mom and pop owners who in fact are not running their properties very thoroughly, of course, so their financials, of course, are not very thorough. I've brought properties with rent rolls on napkins before, large properties. And that can be the part that you have to go in there and certify that what you're buying here for you and of course for your investors is actually what you expect to get. The takeover plan and budgeting. What is the plan? What is your plan day one? What is your plan over the course of the first 6 months or the first 12 months? What is your horizon over the 5 years if it's going to be a 5-year hold? How does that look? Is your plan realistic based on the implementation? If you're taking on a property that's 100% occupied, all with year-long leases, and you have a trajectory that you're going to turn all of the units in year one, then you have to recount and rethink about your plan based on the set of leases and when the lease expiration date is going to be. The owner's objectives. For the owner itself, is your plan aligning with the owner's objectives? If they're looking for a long-term hold, are you in fact doing renovation plan that's going to tier to put you in the best position to hold this property long-term? If it's a short-term hold, are you doing things in terms of your renovation plan? Are you setting in other income drivers that are going to align with a short-term hold? For example, if you're going to look at a solar package, that might not be the right play for you if you're going to only look to hold this for 3 to 5 years. And lastly, your loan requirements. How does the loan itself size into your business plan? For some lenders, there's a certain point of occupancy level that you must maintain. So if your business plan is to go in there and turn a lot of the units, that you have to be apparent and aware of that impact that may happen when you're going to push rents up $200, $300 based on your current occupancy level, so you don't dip too far below. The operations itself, once you do take over the property here, is the evaluation of your performance against pro forma. This is honestly one of the key pieces here, is that so many times we hear a lot, and it's great, right? A lot of people closing deals, right? But asset management, like this is where all the work is, right? You take on a property and it seems like everybody magically stops, but you now have this property for 3, for 5, for 7 years. I equate it like, like you get called up to major leagues, and you're like, I made it, and you step up to the plate, and you're like, I'm here, and then you step up to the plate and you never bat, you just walk off. That's what we hear a lot about out there. The asset management is where the plan comes into place. And along with that, you need to be tracking how your performance is adding up to your pro forma. Is it matching up? Why is it not matching up? Is it on your income side? Is it on your expense side? What can you do to pivot accordingly? Also, on a good point, is it causing that there could be other points of analysis that may cause a different plan of action than your plan out of the gate? We went full cycle on 6 properties in the last 2 years that have now come that we sold early in the cycle of our hold based on performing past our performance. But if we weren't paying attention to the narrative of our properties and just guessing, we may have not put ourselves in the best position to do that. The time and the budget for your construction and repositions. Is your timing, your allocation, your budget, is this being handled accordingly? Are you moving at a good pace? Is there certain things that are holding you up or restricting you from your pace? Is there other things that you need to look at? Is there certain things, of course, like we see today, shortage in labor, different cost of materials, that you may have to change your renovation plan based on certain cost? Well, it may change or impact on your CapEx budget. Will you be doing different turns? Do you need to do the same level of turns to hit the same level of rent growth? There's many times here, especially now, where rent growths are happening at a quick pace. So testing the market, putting in different renovation packages to say, do I need to do this level of renovation to meet this rent growth, or is the market itself bringing this up? Recommendations on income drivers. We come into a property and most people think, man, I can raise rent, right? Well, sounds great on paper, but who's all the people living there? Your tenants. What's the first thing they're thinking when there's a new owner in town? Oh, they're going to raise my rent, right? So that's not a good feeling. But what if you can come into a property here, make this a better place to live, make this a better community, improve the property, which not at first directly affecting the tenant, making this a great place for them to be, for them, their kids, making this a place that they want to be. And then as you do bring the rents up, it makes sense for them. But so many times we put the focus on the rent, and that's the driver, and that's your conflict point with your tenant. So we look for ways that we can optimize the property. And this could be on the expense side, it could be on the income side. Lots of times it's both, because the properties we're buying are underperforming. And this can happen on small properties and large properties. So don't think on a large property, oh, there's going to be no ways to optimize this. Many times, there's plenty of ways to optimize this, because it could be a larger group that's more focused on yield and they don't want to do more. It could be a group that's held it for a long time where they have very low basis and they are just rather keep it full because they don't want to put money out of their pocket to, of course, do turns to push this up. So there's always ways to look to improve the property. So what is your recommendations on expense curtailing? What is your turn process? Many times we come in there and a unit comes vacant, and then we figure out what we want to do. And as you go through this process, your biggest point of course, cost is the time it takes to get your unit turned, the time you're vacant in part, the time it takes to lease. So if you can bridge that gap, say on average it's taking you 5 weeks. If you can bridge that gap on a 100-unit property from 5 weeks to 4 weeks, 5 weeks to 3 weeks, and you're turning 60 units a year, take half a month of rent times 60 units and think about how much you will increase the income over the course of the year just by improving your process. So how could you do that? You could have a set plan of what's going to be turned. You could have a set contract for when they do go to do a turn that you already know exactly what you're going to do. You have a protocol for your plan of action. You have a marketing plan in place. You have a plan with your leasing team so everybody is running the course and not waiting to be reactive, but being active out of the gates. And lastly, facilitating the lender needs and requests. So we talked before about occupancy. We've heard a lot about, of course, bridge loans that may have an inspection draw request. So understanding the patterns of the lender, what is going to be required as we go through this. These are good questions to ask when you're putting together the loan package for the property. Many times when you're first starting out, you close in a deal and the lender sends you a whole list of items, to-dos, as now you have this loan. Asking those questions before you take in the property. Asking this question before you get into the process where you lose time. And it could be if you're running on draws, you're losing time to be able to do an inspection because you don't know the draw process. You don't know the cadence. You're not getting the right lien waivers back, or you're not getting the right payment copies back from your trades. Understanding that process to facilitate you and your plan. So here are some of the top income drivers that you can easily put into most properties out there. Easy ones today, rent increases and capturing a loss to lease. We've seen rent growth in pretty much most major markets, most secondary markets across the board. So getting in there and being more efficient in that property. Additional income that is warranted for the submarket. Could be anything from pet fees to laundry hookup fees, as simple as application fees that they're not billing right there. What is matching a property and what specifically is matching your comps. Just because you think you can do it does not mean you can do it. You need to test, you need to go out there, understand what your rental comps are doing, understand what the market is doing, and you're only going to be driven by the biggest allocation of units there. So we had a property in Louisville, Kentucky. We could bill back for utilities. However, the largest holder of units at that time was like 350 units right in our general submarket, did not want to. It had the properties for 15, 16 years, did not bill back at all. So at that point, we couldn't bill back because he was driving the narrative. And there was another asset who was basically a carbon copy of ours across the street, tried to bill back and got pushbacks from his tenants where they would pay rent and not pay the water bill. Right? So understanding what the largest player in the area is doing, how you can trend to that. And sometimes it will bring you up and sometimes it will bring you down. Contracts for properties. This could be income or expense. Always looking on both sides. So putting everything in from cable contracts to laundry contracts. It can be a lot of different points that you can consistently add. Internet, phone, cable, laundry, cell tower. Understanding what those contracts are, understanding that those should be your responsibility. We bought a property in Murfreesboro, Tennessee 2 years ago, and the owner was paying internet. It was quite a sizable amount of money. He was paying internet for the tenants. He clearly was just fine doing it. However, all the comps, there was no other property in the area here that was paying internet for any of the tenants here. So we were able to roll that back onto the tenant. Including that, we were also to move over the electrical bill, and our effective rent went from $593 up to $950. That including, of course, capturing the loss to lease. So there's a lot of other ways that we could start moving tenants correctly to match the market back from us onto the tenants. On the expense side, some other contracts that just roll over that you may have: pest, landscaping, snow, HVAC, and trash. So we don't think of these expenses a lot, and sometimes as we own a property, we may keep them on from year 1 to year 2, year 3, and not understand that there's actual increases written into the contract. And you just continue to pay these little increases that you're not paying attention to, and you just let them roll, and you find out, if you actually match this and don't test it to the market, that their increases have really excelled what the market is actually costing right now. So constantly understanding what is the expenses here that are rollover expenses, am I tracking with the market? And you can also look at, when you are buying properties, that same ownership group you're buying from, are they paying too much for trades because they're just comfortable, right? Because I could have landscaping that I've used for 5 years, and they're charging me 25% more than the market, and I've just been hitting the easy button because I've been lazy on that point. But that's money that you're losing from your bottom line. Is there any other new value adds warranting additional income and thinking outside the box? The big part that you can win in this game, and it's fun, is that you can go out there and find other ways that you can make this perform better. We think we're buying an apartment building, but you're basically buying a business. So whether you were buying this, or you were buying an amusement park, or you were buying a Wendy's, like, why isn't this working well? Why is this property not working well? And even if the ownership group before you has done well with the property, why can't it work better? Every business can be optimized and work better. So what can I do as the new owner to make this a better place to live, make this a more proper functioning business? How can I do that in my business that it can make this, of course, excel? So additional income streams. How can you increase the income of the property without necessarily adding the burden onto the tenant base? Again, I'm going to get back to this a lot because you're going to see that. I mean, that's that conflict, right? And especially if you want to hedge in your occupancy here, you want to make sure that your first thing is not go in there and try and jack up rents. Because if the building doesn't look great from the inside, it doesn't matter how good you make it look in the inside, everybody's first appearance or first thought of the building is going to, when they drive up, regardless of how beautiful it is inside. So setting the narrative on the outside here, whether it be the landscaping, whether it be the marketing, whether it be the signage, the overall presentation of the property, whether it just be the interaction with the leasing office, any of those points of contention can make your property operate better. So by the time that they've gotten into the unit, they already in their mind have now seen that this could be a better community. Same people with existing tenants right here. If you're going to come, and a lot of tenants are on month to month, you're going to do new leases here. Well, what are you doing to warrant that additional income? Instead of just saying, pay me more money. Are you painting the hallways? Are you making it brighter there? Are you cleaning up the curb appeal? What are you doing to make people feel that this is a better community to live? Are you fixing the potholes in the parking lot? What are you doing? So other areas here, of course, that you can start implementing to match the market would be utility efficiencies. How can you optimize the property? One of our key pieces we've done in the majority of our properties, if you're buying assets that are 1970s, 1960s, sometimes 1980s, is that they may be master metered. So how can you make these properties operate more efficiently? Can you go back there? Can you change out the toilets to low flush toilets? Can you change out the valves, the faucets to aerators? Can you cut down your water bill, again, without affecting the tenant? Expenses, reducing flow pressure of air bubbles, green initiatives, replacing toilets, replacing faucets and shower heads. There's loans out there that will give you a discount to your rate by tracking with green initiatives. We've had ones before, we've done everything from replacing all the light bulbs with LEDs to insulating water heater piping. That actually gave us a rate drop of like 20 bips on our rate just for doing small things like that because it cut down our overall energy usage. Adding in fees that are warranted by the surrounding properties. Again, we talked about not being able to bill back by the surrounding property, but that same property here was missing a ton of fees. They weren't, of course, they had no tenant screening process, there was no application process. They had 7 pets, even though they said they don't require pets, but they weren't billing for pets. And so when we did our walk and we did our inspection, they had 6 dogs and a snake, right? So we're able to go in there and just put in, of course, pet fees. Next past that, they had 2 laundry rooms. Both laundry rooms were down. They had no intention to get them back up. In fact, there was no laundry in the general area. None of the surrounding buildings had laundry, so we were able to put both of those laundry rooms back online, get them functioning. We actually got a laundry contract with a provider that handled machines, handled all the maintenance machines. They gave us a decorating fee, which I think at the time was like $9,000 just for direct access to that. They handled all the coins. I didn't have to have my maintenance guy go count coins. And for that, we did a revenue split where we got 60% of the revenue and they got 40. Things like that gave us an additional line of income. We also put a cable contract on a property here, done this a number of times. We're able to put a cable contract on the property that we chose a non-bulk contract, meaning that they would go in there and have direct access to the building, and we would get a door fee again, typically to the decorating fee, and on top of that, we would get a split of revenue based on the penetration of how many people use that cable company. Is there a proper application and screening fees? Now, this is an important part here, especially when you're buying a property, and a little bit on the due diligence side, if you see the tracking of the last 12 months and there's a huge increase right as they're thinking about selling of your occupancy, okay, what is warranted in that? Have they now taken out their screening process and just put anybody with a beating heart into the building here, and that's now going to be your problem? So what is their proper application, and is there screening fees? And if that, what is your plan, and what does your property manager do? And as you go to increase your rents, you also want to track the level of how many applications does it take to get a qualified tenant. Because if your rent's coming into the property where, say, $700 a unit for a 2-bedroom, and it's every one of 3 get you a qualified application, what happens when you take yourself up to that next level of rent, that $950? Is it now 1 of 3 still, or is it 1 of 5? Is it 1 of 7? How does it adjust to the market? And what does that do to the pace? Do you have to improve your marketing? Do you have to put more budgeting to market allocation in a different spot? Do you have to make sure you continue to change the dynamic of the property before you can even get these higher rents? We had a property in Murfreesboro, another one that was 93 units, and it was we had an interesting scenario that we had 50 of the tenants were on week-to-week leases, and that's what everybody knew this property of. If you could not get a property or a rental unit anywhere in town, or probably anywhere in the county, or maybe even anywhere in the state, you could call this place and get a rental unit on a week-to-week basis. That's what everybody knew. So it took us almost 4 to 5 months to stop that flow of calls to come in, to change the narrative of the property, to change the landscape and the opinion of the property. So if we tried to come in here out of the gate and really jack the rents to the market, we would have been faced with a narrative, because the context of what that property was, the opinion of that property was set not only in the overall landscape of the town, but also in the opinion of everybody living there. So, top expense savers, management efficiencies. Can be a very simple one here. Many times when you're buying a property, it could be a mom and pop shop if you're buying a smaller property, and them, in fact, they're doing a lot of things themselves. They're very heavy-handed. They may not be paying attention to what they're actually doing. And this can help if you do and you know the efficient process for this. They may be their own accountant, their own turn person. They could be handling 10, 11 different tasks there and not billing themselves accordingly. So understanding what's the management process. We once brought a property here, 48 units in Kentucky, and the owner had like 400 keys on him. We were walking through doing our due diligence, walking units. He had people like coming up, handing him half bags of cash, saying, hey, you gotta come fix the toilet. He had 3 units that were basically rent ready, minus he had to go stretch the carpet, and he said that, and he had them leased, and he said it was gonna take 4 weeks for him to get to it, right? So pretty easy to officially manage that property if you just take it over and put proper systems in place and empower other people to help you. What are the economies of scale? If you have a small property like the 48 unit, we're able to buy the 58 unit next door, combine them into one property. And that actually allowed us to hire on a full-time leasing person and a full-time maintenance person. If you don't have the access to have another property around you, does your management company have multiple assets in the area that maybe you could split a maintenance person? So you could have a more direct person for them. Could they split a leasing person, or overall efficiencies between that route? Utility efficiencies like we talked about. Can you do other things past water savings, past energy savings? What can you do? Green program, and of course, tenant training. Now that sounds bad, but many times you take on a property and the biggest issue is that the prior ownership group just has refused to take care, refused to go in there and fix things. So if you're a tenant, what are you going to do? You're going to stop calling. And what does that do? Well, that hurts you. It hurts your bottom line because the toilet may be running for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and it's just too much effort for them to call 4 or 5 times for someone to come fix that. So your first thing coming into a property is to make them know that there's a new sheriff in town who wants to take care of this place because it wants to make this a better place to live. And you need to empower the property management company to understand that that's the plan of process. Because what's going to happen here is if they don't do that, and you go in there and allow the same process to go, well, that's literally, of course, money running down the toilet. So putting in plans in place and proper protocols, making sure the tenants know you are there to make this a better place to live and make this a better, more efficient community that's going to continue to carry through to you, your plan, your purpose. Thinking outside the box. These are many points here where some may work, some may be useful, some may be points that you can think about, and you can think about plenty of more. We've used these across properties, all in some combination. From adding additional units. So we've had properties like we talked about before where they were smaller properties and the owner was using one of the units as his own office. Well, if I can come in here and find another spot for a unit, we once took the laundry room, which was massive, split that off and made an office into there. We were able to get additional revenue stream coming in. Can I turn and make a unit that's commercial space if zoned correctly? Can I utilize basements into storage areas? We've done that on a property, had 2 huge basements, and the group actually running the property had 3 maintenance guys when they really should have had 1, and I found out why, because they had a wrestling ring in the basement, and they were wrestling down there instead of fixing everything. So we went in there and got rid of the wrestling ring, got back to having 1 maintenance guy here, put storage units down there that cost us $250 a pop to put them in, and we were able to bill back $25 a month, right? So we had our money back in a year for something as simple as that. Making sheds into storage, making garages a premium. If you're into an area here that cold weather, we're here in Denver, you have garages, you're charging effectively for those. If you're in a place that has covered parking here, hotter town in Arizona, Texas, are you charging accordingly here? Preferred parking, closer to units. If there's not a lot of parking here, based on an older property, is there premium parking that can be charged? If it's not access to your dumpsters, can you offer trash valet? We're looking at a property right now that they're offering on cost for them, not on the tenant, trash valet. However, only 25% of the tenants are using it. So the question is it even worth doing it, right? So that's a piece that it's a drive right now to their expenses where could we just take that out and even just try and build back to see if that 25% still wants it. So understanding what are the things that we're using, are they actually useful to it? Vending machines, covered parking, move-in fees with a sure bond. In certain areas, we've done move-in fees instead of a security deposit. Lots of times tenants, they're worried about moving in. The second they move in, they nick the wall and they're worried you're going to take their security deposit, a big part of it. Well, we went and just got away with the security deposit and did a move-in fee, which was basically another piece, basically a decorating fee for moving them in. And that decorating fee went right to our bottom line, another income driver. And we capitalized by really, hedging our downside with a sure bond and allowed us to have additional income coming to our bottom line without effect having the whole tenant narrative thinking about the security deposit and worried about each little thing they were doing into the unit. Marketing. Can anyone find you? Easiest thing to do, if you can't find the property, no one else can find the property. Is it well lit? Is it well managed? Is it easy to find, whether it be just on Zillow, on Facebook? Does it have a website? Does it have an online presence? Is the presence good? Going back to the property that we had that had weekly tenants, how do you think our reviews were on that property? Well, they didn't even know you could get we had like 65 one-star reviews, right? So on that front, that was a low barrier and a lot that we could grow from. So we had to change the branding, we had to change the marketing, we had to change the narrative of that property. It's a day and age, everybody and my grandma is on Facebook and every other part. They will go Google the property. That's going to be their first experience. Most of the times, they're not driving to the property first to figure out the concept and the idea of the property. You're going to Google it. So can they find you? Can they find you easily? From a leasing standpoint, is anybody picking up the phone when you call? If you are going to buy a property, you should call your competitors. One, you can just ask them about their property. You can learn a lot. You can learn what they're billing. You can learn what they're charging. You can learn what they're not doing. You can learn about really a lot of their plan and process. But you can also see if they're not picking up the phone, well, it's going to be pretty easy to do better than them just by picking up the phone. You should test your property when you do have your property. You should be calling up your property to see if your leasing person is picking up the phone. And if they're not, why not? What is that plan and process? So being realistic with your tenant base, your credit score, and your tenant quality leads. We talked earlier from this point, when we're doing our leasing, when we're doing our marketing here, and we're changing the narrative of our entire property, how does that change our marketing compared to our leads, right? How is our applications tracking up? And this is really important here, because if you're getting literally 1 of 10, what do you have to do to increase this? What do you have to do to improve this? Is it the rental rate itself from the qualifying factor? You have to bring that down. What do you need to do to improve this so you can continue to move your building forward? Adding amenities, right? So parts of this is that some of these you can't see from an income point, the pool, the dog walk, the gym, but does that set the narrative and change the pace of that property? So the property I'm still referring to here, the weekly property here, looked like a concrete jail when we brought it. And so those 65 one-star reviews, concrete jail, that's a landscape. It took us 13, 14 months now. We've turned almost 78 of the 93 units. We only have 3 weekly leases, weekly rentals left, and it's because they're good payers and they actually are paying a high premium based on paying weekly rentals. It had a pool that was down, had 2 acres behind it that was just a bunch of grass. No one was out there. It had a very sad basketball court where I guess you can call it a basketball court. Had nothing of amenities from anything past just being a concrete box. Went there, really improved the landscaping, improved the whole dynamic, improved the branding, improved the signing, painted the buildings, lightened up the buildings, improved the parking lot, added in here a dog walk, got the pool up, got a little barbecue area there. And the nice thing about that, the kids are playing outside now. The kids didn't play outside before, they're playing outside now. So that landscape, that opinion, right? Families, and this is a good family area. What's driving the property? Well, they weren't playing out there before, right? Well, they are now. And that now is the perception of the property. It's changed because we've added a plan to make this a better community, and it's filtered through the property, of course, to where our income, our collections went from first month 55,000, we're at 90,000 this month. That's a big jump right there. And it didn't start month 1, it didn't start month 2, it was a persistent plan, right? Going slow to go fast, to have a plan in place, to understanding what was our future goals. So our future goals were to change this community, make this a better place. And that was enabling us to put in a dog walk, to put in a pool. Because if we did that day 1, it wouldn't have been the right plan or approach because the property wasn't ready yet. So looking at your plan, looking at your pro forma, how are you tracking the pro forma, how are you tracking to the performance of pro forma, how can you pivot? In this way, we were able to pivot in a good way. When we took on this property to begin with, we did not think about the dog walk. We did not think about these other things that may be good ancillary pieces to the property. But as we've seen this property evolve and trend up, we've consistently looked at our pro forma and compared to performance and said, how can we continue to take this? Because now we're moving up in class of the properties based on the performance. Fine-tuning your process. Want more income? Your biggest hit, of course, is when the unit goes down. We touched on this earlier here, but your unit goes vacant, and you say, oh man, we got to get someone over to quote it. Maybe it's the management company, maybe it's your contractor. You lose 2 or 3 days. Okay, they get over there, they got to run out. Got 5? Cool. Got 5, so we're going to go fast. They run out, they go, they get you a quote. You know, they give you like the kitchen sink quote because they don't know what you want. They go back, they have to write it up. It takes them another week. So now you're a week and a half into it. You look at it and say, oh, I don't want half these things, and you go back and give me another price. So now you're 2 weeks into it, right? Oh, okay, yes, let's do it. Now they can't start for a week. So now we're 3 weeks into it, right? Now at that fact, they come out here, they get going, they get all turned, they need 2 weeks, let's say we're 5 weeks into it. And now gets done, don't have any marketing pictures, you got to get in there and take marketing pictures. You have to have now go get leasing, get in applications, tenant's not going to turn, and you just lost 2 months. Well, okay, 1 unit, maybe not so bad, but if you have 50 units, 100 units, 150 units, think about how much lost revenue just happened because you were not efficient with your process. So where can you streamline your process? Where can you streamline your pace to make this more efficient so you can get this back to a revenue-generated unit. Simple goal here, if something's not generating revenue, how can I get it back making money quickly and efficiently? And if the last time didn't work, what can we learn from that and move forward to the next one? So a couple steps into the action. This is actually the first property we brought, right? Back in 2017, amazing purchase price that will, if we ever get that again, call me. But on that front, value add property. The owner was 90, he had passed away. Kids took over the property, they were 55, 60. Of course, they don't want this arbitrage. They live in another state. So they wanted to just make it completely stay occupied so they don't have to do anything. So the narrative here is we were able to go in there, find a ton of operational upside. They were $100 to $150 under market just based on the neighboring properties. Literally the same property across the street, you go, just pay more. They were also had 7 vacant units when the rest of the submarket itself was at 2 and 3% because they weren't actively marketing. And the leasing person wouldn't pick up the phone because she was watching Dog the Bounty Hunter when we were doing our inspection walk. And they were having collection problems because she was not allowed to collect rent. The tenants themselves had to go drive it 5 miles to drop it off. So there's many things that were just very easy and very simple to just say, that doesn't work. How can we make it work? And work with our property management company who had units, a good amount of units in that area to make that more efficient. Easy point here, we raised $700K, equity was syndicated. At that time, we had this 7-6 arm with Fannie. I'm not sure we even use that loan anymore. And we debt and equity, Arbor loan. So that was Norberg right there. We used everything from adding a laundry contract, adding a cable contract, putting in efficiencies to putting in the right leasing person and maintenance person in play. We were able to exit that property early in 2 years at very good returns for our investors. This one right here, 58 unit, I was able to walk next door from the 48 unit we owned. I asked the owner if he wanted to sell. He said, absolutely not. He said, I hate doing this. I'm 75, but my son doesn't want to sell it, who's 55 and does nothing on the property. Well, one day, two years later, one of the cars hit the gas instead of hitting the brake and drove right through the unit. And the owner, who was 75, was doing all those repairs. He was done. So we consistently followed up. The guy called me up and said, when are you going to be in town again? I was actually going to be there next week. The cool thing about this was I had made an offer to him 2 years prior. He had increased rents 2 times. And at that point, we still had the same price for where I had offered 2 years before. I was able to combine this with the neighboring property, get back the efficiency of the scale by combining 2 assets, which of course cut down on my labor costs, was able to now have a better marketing presence, rebranded both properties together. So now it was one larger property where this not only helped me from the operation standpoint, but also gave me a much better allocation of sellers when we did go to sell this last year. Because now a group could come in there that now does not have to look at 2 small, inefficient properties, now had one larger property where it had a full team in place that they could just buy the process of the larger performing business. So I know I'm running short in time right here. This is one we're into now. Valley View Apartments here, 36 units. Look for where the efficiencies is. This was a property, and the inefficiency here was this is in a beautiful residential town, or in Little Rock, right off of downtown. It is surrounded by $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 houses, just little old gym. The ownership group had a residential agent friend who was just marking this property and had this up on all the residential sites. So if you were someone in here looking for a $700,000 home, it was home, 36-unit apartment building, home, as if that person was going to just magically buy a 36-unit apartment building. So we were able to find that deal because a friend there who knew the area very well said, would you look at Little Rock, and showed us how great of a deal this was. And we've been able to go in there and do a lot of the same things we just talked about in the other properties. We'll continue to do to carry forward, with the goal being make it a better community to live, a better place for your tenants, which of course is going to make more revenue for the building, more revenue for you and your investors. Keep it simple, keep it efficient, keep a plan in place, track your performance, and move forward. And I'm moving quick because I know we're right there on time. Again, that's me. That's my wife, who's better talking than me, but she's here at home talking to 3 kiddos right now. You want to find us, you want to find some bonus material, go up there and get that QR code, 7-figure multifamily. We're out there. We got an awesome little booth going on, and we will have Multifamily Live coming up in Nashville, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Thank you so much, guys. Future success with your properties. Let's do this.